Hello, everyone, and welcome to Alternative Talk 1150 KKNW. I'm Marilyn Milano, and I'm going to be having a conversation today with a Christian Science practitioner, James Shepherd, who is with the 12th Church of Christ Scientist Lecture Series. He is going to be giving a talk on April 20th at 7 p.m. at the Central Seattle Public Library downtown. Now, I'm going to read a brief introduction that really tells you about who he is and what he does, and then we will jump back on and join in a conversation with James. So this is from James himself, his own words. God's love is for everyone, and a Christian Science lecture is a perfect setting to learn about God's love and the healing that it brings. I've seen the healing effects of God's love since I was a youngster, romping through the woods around our home with my 3 brothers. We had our share of scrapes and bruises, which were quickly healed through prayer. We didn't get sick often, but when we did, we relied on Christian Science for quick healings. In high school, our family moved to a ranch where we had cattle, horses, sheep, pigs, chickens, and turkeys. I graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in agriculture, but realized that serving as a Christian Science healer was the best way I could serve others. So I left the ranch and took up the full-time work of helping others find healing through prayer. That was 30 years ago, and I still love this work as much as ever. Over the years, I've enjoyed being active in many offices in my local Church of Christ Scientists, and I've worked at summer camps for Christian Scientists and their friends. I've also shared the message of love's transforming power in prison settings and youth detention centers. When my 4 children were little, I coached or participated in their sports programs. I've also found other ways to help in my community, such as by volunteering at a neighborhood church to help cook a free breakfast for those in need. I love spending time with my family, and I enjoy doing almost anything outdoors, from backpacking to doing a little work on the family ranch. But my greatest joy will always be to find and to help others find a more tangible sense of God's love for everyone and how that improves every aspect of our lives. So those were James's own words. We will take a very short little break to reorganize and just get all set up here. And then we will be back with the interview with James Shepherd of the Church of Christ Scientist. And again, mark your calendar, Thursday, April 20th, 7 p.m. at the Central Seattle Public Library, where you'll be able to hear him speak as well. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back, everyone. Marilyn Milano here again, and this time we have James with us. So, James, first of all, welcome. Thank you for taking time to have this conversation with us today.
Oh, thank you, Marilyn. So good to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. And so we read your introduction so we could learn a little more about you. Before we get started, I'm going to give out your website as well, so people can write that down and go there if they'd like to learn more. And that is prayerheals.us. So it's the typical HTTP and www, but the website is prayerheals.us. So what it says here about you, James, is that you are a public practitioner of Christian Science healing, a member of the board of lectureship, and that just what we talked about earlier, you grew up on the farm and have 4 children, and your greatest love is really helping others experience God's love in their lives in a healing way. So tell me, how long have you been traveling and giving talks like this?
Well, as far as traveling, actually just been a couple of years since the pandemic. I started giving these talks during the pandemic. It was all online, and so now I'm traveling, and I just last couple of years. So I just love this traveling and really getting to see people in person. It's just so much nicer than just, you know, the online stuff. So it's just been a couple of years.
Well, it is nice to be able to see people in real time. I mean, I belong to a business group, and when we met in person for the first time in January, it was very different. So you do get more of a connection when you can see people and see what their response is and so forth. Yeah. And besides giving talks like this, what else do you do? Now, we touched a little bit on that. You talk to people about how God's love can improve their lives, but maybe what would a typical week or month be like for you?
Oh, a typical week or month. Well, so yeah, besides the traveling, what I also do is work with people to find healing through prayer. So people call me or email or text me, and we then discuss whatever it is that they're looking to see healing, wanting healing for, and then use this Christian Science method to really dive more deeply into seeing, for me, it's just getting a clear sense of what's real, what's really going on. If there's this all good, all loving God, and what does that really mean about us? Kind of looking past the surface level of things, sometimes past the fear or whatever it is that kind of stuck in our thought.
Right, right. Now, I mean, I go to my own local small church, and I know one of the things that comes up when I'm talking to friends is that people seem skeptical, especially here in the Northwest. We're not a very churched area. And so, what is your response to the skepticism that you may encounter? First of all, do you encounter it? And secondly, how do you respond when people are like, yeah, somebody made that up or whatever? Because I'm sure you probably hear it. And so I'd like to know, how you talk with people about that.
Yeah, well, certainly I do hear it all the time. And I guess a couple of responses, at least for me in my life, what's made, I guess the skepticism you're talking about is really if there's a God, or if there is some kind of force or power that's sort of bigger and larger than we can see. And
yes.
So I guess maybe part of the short answer for that is that I've seen the results of prayer, seeing the results of for me getting this clear sense of God. But so that's one of the aspects. And the other one I think is, I might not always believe in well, sometimes the God that we think of is, I think, just too small. And I do often talk about that the universe is so vast. We know that the universe is so vast, and sometimes we just have a very small, limited, narrow sense of what God is. So part of this is expanding it. When the Bible says God is love or God is spirit, well, expanding that. And what is infinite spirit and love really like? And then as we do that, I think we can say, okay, I do recognize that there is some source to this love that's going on that's so much bigger than just who I am. So that might be a little bit of how we start looking at this bigger sense of God.
Right. And I have found that a lot of times when people question the existence of God, because I'm talking to some people who are going through some hard times right now, just personal friends, and they start asking, is there a God? Does he or she or it hear me? Why am I having all these troubles when I've tried to do right all my life? What do you say to folks who, because obviously you've seen a lot of healings. You saw it yourself when you were a child with your brothers. You rarely got sick. What do you say to people who say, I've been praying, I prayed for my friend and he's not getting any better, or I'm not getting any better? How do you address that? And what kind of encouragement can you give folks?
That's a great question, in a lot of different ways, maybe. And a lot of times just kind of listening for what the right answer is, because each case is different. But certainly a couple of things. One of them is that just letting them know they're not doing something wrong. I think sometimes people think, what am I doing wrong that I have this fallen upon me or whatever it is? And just and so that's part of it. And then sometimes having a little bit of a persistence and saying, you know what, no matter what, I've seen this, and other people have seen it and experienced it enough to know that there is something bigger here. So keep going. Jesus said, knock and it shall be open. So keep knocking, keep having that faith, that and which might lead to a little bit of understanding that there is an all good God that's not looking the other way, not distracted. But if love is all, then that love is here. So we're just trying to see that. One of the examples I sometimes think of is, because I've had a lot of ranch experience, is a little baby bird or in an egg, in a shell before it hatches out. And what's its world like? It's dark and probably cramped in there, and it thinks the world is just this little dark, probably not too comfortable place. But then as it pecks open, it sees not a whole new universe, because that universe is always there, but it sees that the brightness of what's really there. So this healing process is breaking through kind of those limits that we have on ourselves and those tough times. And I would also say to people, we all have those tough times, and let's help each other work through some of them.
Well, it's the old a quote about seeing through a glass darkly. That, and you know, one way that I heard it put, I don't know if this resonates with you or not, is that a fish in a fishbowl
Hmm.
cannot understand or conceive of the idea of breathing air.
Hmm.
It's foreign. And yet there's a whole world of creatures that breathe air. So I mean, I think like you said, sometimes we have to get beyond our limited interpretation. Now, you
Yeah.
noted that you had done work on your ranch and with animals, and that you felt that, you know, helping people experience God's love and understand and perhaps heal from some of their own issues was a better way for you to use your gifts. So what exactly made you change directions? Was it a gradual thing, or did you have like an epiphany, or what happened?
I'd say probably for me, it was a gradual thing. I just loved farming. I loved being on the farm, but well, I mean, gradually over a year or two, it was like, this is really good, but as people who sometimes come to me to find healing, and then I could help them and help them be better. I mean, there's nothing. We all just love to help people out. That's what we're all about, is humanity. And
Yeah.
so that was just, I just thought, well, this is something even more important than farming. It's a way that, and of course it gratifies and makes us feel that purpose as well, to be able to help
Yes.
others.
Yes, it does. And I mean, so, and this question is just kind of a follow-up to what you just said, but what makes you feel that what you're doing is actually helpful? I mean, is it the response that you get? Is when you actually see the changes in people's lives? What is it that gives you that confirmation that what you are doing is indeed helping others?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's the change in people's lives, and when people, call or let me know, hey, I'm doing better, thank you, or I'm doing well. And of course, we give all the praise, all the thanks to really to God, but to help
Yeah.
somebody see more clearly their true nature as godlike. And with what I'm talking about in this talk, where I talk about why everyone's needed.
Yes.
Yeah, there's nothing maybe more valuable in our lives than really feeling like we have a purpose and that we're needed.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, and that was leading into my next question, which is, um, this is an important topic, whether someone is attending a Church of Christ Scientist lecture or just looking at the world. We do need everyone. We need people to help each other, to help themselves. I know most people have it in their hearts that they would like to help, but maybe they don't know how, or they feel overwhelmed. There are this many million animals, this many million people that need help. And what can I do with my $10 donation or my 1 hour of free time a week? So
Mhm.
can you give a little idea of why everyone is needed and what you're going to delve into a little bit more in your lecture?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. I think I talked earlier about getting this bigger sense of God, and then one of the things I talk a lot about, and one of the ways that I like to look at it, is God being the only cause. The Bible talks about that a lot, God being the only creator. Well, every cause has to have an effect. And so that's really what we are. We're that effect, the effect of the goodness, the love, the joy, whatever those qualities of God are. That's what we're manifesting. That's what we're exhibiting. And so in order for God to be infinite, there has to be this infinite expression of God. So it's even bigger than what our worth and value is, as right here on earth. But what is it as God's offspring, as God's effect? And that's a worth and a value that never changes. And that's much different than, I think, sometimes what the world says gives us our value and worth. But
Yeah.
just having those godlike qualities, that's what's really needed.
Well, kindness, love, support, caring about your fellow human being. I mean, those things are all, I think, even needed more than ever now. I mean, they've always been needed, but it seems like now it's kind of a rough world out there for many people. And so, I mean, it seems like this would be helpful. Now, how in general, how have people reacted to these ideas? I mean, I'm assuming people that understand the Christian Science faith, they have a little more knowledge about it. But say somebody's coming to a lecture and they've never been really exposed, or they just heard, yeah, okay, well, Christian Science means it's mind over matter and you don't get sick and you don't go to the doctor. So, I mean, they've got these ideas. So how are people reacting when they come to a lecture and when they hear what you have to say?
Well, I think that they come, often come up to me and thank me. And whether they're Christian Scientists or not, I mean, we all want to hear that we're needed and valued and loved. And so
Yes.
I don't necessarily even know afterwards. I like to greet people. And so I don't necessarily know how much they've studied Christianity or any of that, but
Right.
it's the smile in their face, the liveliness in people's expressions. And I
Yes.
also like to, like to make sure that people can take this home with them and recognize that, I can go home and find out more about my identity. I can find out more about my nature through reading the Bible and the Christian Science textbook, which is Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. So, it's to me, it's more of a beginning of an experience for people than just a nice little inspirational talk, but something to really get us to start thinking deeply. That's what I love about Christian Science. It gets us to think deeply. Thinkers are needed.
Yeah, well, that's true. And I mean, so it sounds like what you're doing is planting seeds,
Hmm.
and then people can take these seeds. I mean, speaking as to someone who's, been in the agricultural work, but I mean, you're planting seeds and then you're seeing what comes up. And then as people learn more, they want to explore it. It's like, well, how might this help me? Or how might this help those that I love? And maybe what have I misunderstood, or what were my misconceptions? And so it starts to get those things germinating in the head. And so this kind of also just follows up on what we just talked about. But why would people benefit from attending like a direct, like somebody comes to the lecture? And I mean, if you're just talking about the direct benefit of coming and not necessarily the 6 months to 6 years of work that they might put in to try to understand, what can they expect to feel, see, experience that's going to be a benefit?
Well, certainly they're going to, my goal is that everyone in there certainly feels loved, feels this, from this bigger sense of infinite love, not just a personal love, but this love of God that's all around, and that they recognize that, this is just more than just sort of a feel good thing, but that seeing through the different examples and how we can shift our thought just through a little thought shift, that can have that tangible effect in the small and large areas of our lives. But to me, it keeps getting back to this isn't just some sort of nice words or theory, but that they're really ideas, practical ideas, that if we keep them in the top of our thought as we go about our day, just as in any science, if we take these ideas with us, that it can just help us in little and large ways. And I just want to see people helped and help through some of the difficult times that I know everyone is in.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think that's admirable. And I mean, you are correct. Most of us do have a need to feel needed and useful. That might look different for some of us than others, but no one wants to feel like they're expendable or that what they're doing doesn't matter or that they've been a failure or that they're useless. And I mean, sometimes it's as little as reaching out to someone, giving encouragement, maybe sharing some of these ideas that can help them. And I mean, so I think that's fantastic. Now, a lot of people, as I referred to earlier, probably aren't that familiar with Christian Science as a religion. So can you give like a brief overview, just so there's a general understanding that people have an idea, what the overview looks
Sure.
like?
I think in the larger sense, if you take Christian Science, it's much more than a religion. It's the Christian Science is considered like the laws of God, the laws that Jesus knew that enabled him to heal people, the law really of God's love for us, and we can never be separated from God's goodness. So it's kind of that science part. And then there is the church, the Christian Science church, which helps us learn these ideas in which Jesus taught. And, I'd say it's Christian because it's based entirely on Jesus's words and works. It has a deep love for Jesus, a reverence, sees Jesus as the Son of God. And then it's a science because these are these ideas that Jesus knew that enabled him to heal. Well, those are still around today. And seeing, again, maybe breaking through that shell that we were talking about earlier, we can all do that. That's something that's present here and now. So it's something that we can use in our lives.
And, I think, again, I know that the Northwest in particular, I mean, there are other areas of the country, but the people are skeptical here. They're like, oh, yeah, okay, I haven't been to a church in years, or heard all that. So, um, what, um, what do you say to someone who maybe has tried to do what they've learned, but they're not seeing the change they'd like? They're not maybe seeing healing, or I mean, maybe things seem stuck. How do you encourage folks in that situation?
Well, I think everyone, maybe not everyone, but most people believe in things like love, and so when there's maybe that skepticism, well, do you believe in love? Well, what's the source of that love? And we can see it's something more than our brain or our heart. There's something there that's a source of love, or source or truth. There's more to. Everyone believes that in truth, and gosh, today everyone's looking for truth. You look at different media. But
Yes.
what is the source of real truth, of real health? And so I would say for anyone who's stuck, that we can continue to look at those and to dig in more deeply, and maybe to get outside of ourselves a little bit and make sure that we're loving others, and that we're seeing that goodness in others, because a lot of times that has a beneficial effect. Being
Yes.
grateful for what we have, and then seeing, the title isn't why I'm needed, it's why everyone is needed. And as we broaden that out to those maybe who we're not getting along with at home or at school, that's, I think, where a lot of the healing comes, is that unselfish loving of others.
And that can be hard, I mean, it's
Yeah.
easier to love people who are lovable or kind, or that need us, or that, maybe down in the dumps and we're going to help them out. But, sometimes it's hard to be loving toward people who aren't very pleasant or don't seem appreciative. And I've even mentioned that, to my own friends at my church about how, I don't feel like loving that person.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm honest, I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And yet I do understand the concept of having a love in our hearts for each individual, for all the creatures on our planet. And that love means that we don't want to do them harm, that we want to see good things come to them. And it can be a challenge, but I mean, it sounds like what you were doing and what you were teaching is how we can better approach that, and how we can better understand that. And then the transformative power of what happens when we are not only looking to understand love, but to love others and to express and give that love. And it may be a challenge, but if we can get over that hump, then it's going to make life better.
Yeah. And I think that's 100% right. We have to keep looking at our thought. What are we really thinking? Because we can all say that we think of someone, and it's sometimes hard to love that person. And so I think that's why the first way, instead of looking at them first as our neighbor or our family member or our enemy, that we look at them first as the offspring of God. And if we can see some little bits of God shining through them, then that's the start, I think, of loving others. But yeah, if we're honest, I think we all come to that place of,
well,
time.
And I mention those things only because I know they're probably going through a few people's heads, like, okay, that all sounds fine and good, but I don't like my neighbor, or my mother-in-law or father-in-law is terrible. And I mean, so yeah, it is a whole different thing. It is a broader sense of loving humanity, of having love for these people and wanting what is right for them. So I
would just also say, though, that doesn't mean we have to accept whatever's ungodlike, that we see, whether in ourselves or in others.
Right.
It's trying to separate that and recognize, well, if they're completely godlike, then whatever's not godlike really has no place in who they really are. So we're not just accepting whatever behavior is going on.
Good point.
Yeah.
That's good to know, because then somebody's going to be, well, like, if this person is, being physically cruel to people or bullying or whatever, we're supposed to love that. And I think it's really important to separate that out. So we just have a few minutes.
Okay.
It's amazing how fast time goes when we're talking about interesting and meaningful things. So 2 quick questions. Again, just how have you found this to be an effective approach to healing in your life? And then finally, any last suggestions. I mean, I know, again, I'm going to just say quickly the lecture again, April 20th, Thursday, 7 p.m., Central Seattle Public Library downtown. We are talking with James Shepard. This lecture title is Everyone is Needed. So, James, just again, you've kind of touched on this, but how have you found it to be an effective approach to healing? And then any, wrap up message for folks who are listening who might be considering attending.
Okay. Well, I would say how I found it to be an effective part of healing. It's just, to me, it's just an effective part of our lives. If you just take this title, Why Everyone's Needed. If we approach, wake up in the morning and we think about that, and then we walk out the door and we keep that in mind, that everyone is needed because they're God's offspring. I mean, if we could do that for one day, all day long, which I've never done, but, working at it, just think of the impact that has, not only on you, but on that other person, because that's what they'll feel. They'll feel that godlikeness that's in them coming through.
That's right.
Yeah. And why? So that's what has the impact, and not just making us feel good, but having tangible healing impact in our lives.
Yeah, when we can feel that and it's tangible, it makes it much more real. And so, again, just any thoughts for folks who might be thinking about coming, or maybe we pique their interest, or just, parting words of wisdom?
Yeah, well, I just think if, some people are curious about Christian Science, if you want to get a better understanding of what Christian Science is, and I would say everyone wants a little better sense of why they're needed and why they're valued. And
yes.
And, I travel around a lot. I go to a lot of hotels and a lot of airplanes and all that. But when it comes to that 1 hour that we have together, that just makes it all worth it. So I'd just love to see every one of you come in and chat with me a little bit, maybe before or afterwards, and just have this real feeling of seeing and valuing everyone as worthy and needed because we're all God's offspring.
Well, I think that's a great message and good encouragement. So again, James, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Truly appreciate it. We're going to be talking to people about this upcoming event on April 20th. And I know that there will be people who are curious and who are going to want to show up. And it sounds intriguing and positive and life affirming. So again, thank you for that. I'm your host, Marilyn Milano. We will take a short pause before we wrap up everything. But James, thank you again, and have a great week. And I hope your lecture is attended well, and that it's everything you hope it will be.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll be right back. I'm Marilyn on 1150 Alternative Talk.